Right, let's kick off and get started because we have kept everybody on the line waiting long enough. Welcome everyone to our first hybrid event. So as Steph said, we're a little bit rusty, so thanks for bearing with us while we get our room AV sorted. My name is Claudia Piscatelli. I am from Engage Squared. I'll introduce our speakers in a moment, but before we officially kick off with the session for today, just a really quick introduction to who Engage Squared is for those who might not be as familiar. So we are a modern work partner. We call ourselves specialists in people-friendly technology, and we specialise in helping organisations of all shapes and sizes to leverage Microsoft technology. So we do that by implementing solutions using the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us here today. Great, so we have our lovely speakers with us in the room today. So joining us from Engage Squared, we've got Andrew Jolly, who's our practice lead for information management.
Good morning.
We also have Cameron Dwyer, our technology officer at OnePlace Solutions, and Max McNamara, who is director of solution engineering at AvePoint. So thank you for joining us today, guys. It's a pleasure to have you all with us here. I am going to stop sharing for a moment so that we can see everybody in the room. Hopefully you can see our fantastic panelists in the room with you, and you can see me hovering in the background. I might actually come and stand in front of them so that they can see me and we can have a chat. All right, let's get started with the conversation today. Cameron, I'd love to get started with you and just ask a little bit about information management and employee experience, because it's not usually two things that kind of go hand in hand when in terms of conversations. When people think employee experience, information management is probably not the first thing that comes to mind, but it definitely is a really big part of improving digital employee experience. So I just wanted to ask, what are you seeing today, and what role does information management play in employee experience?
Okay, thank you and good morning. I guess let's get the obvious out of the way first. Employee experience, if organisations aren't looking at it, they really need to be, in the wake of us moving from working in the office 5 days a week to remote and hybrid work. As we've gone through that shift, I think people have reprioritised what's important to them in life as well. And in a post-COVID world, they're expecting more from their employers. And that's really shone the spotlight on the employee experience. And organisations are struggling to retain their existing employees and to attract new talent. So let's talk about information. From an employee's point of view, there's just simply too much information. It doesn't matter if you're just starting in a new role in an organisation or if you've been there for years and years. The sheer amount of information that our employees have to deal with is overwhelming, is a good way to put it. To filter out all the noise, there's all this information, and it's important information for an organisation, but for every one employee, trying to find the right information to get their job done is a challenge. So enter the role of information management. And information management inside of an organisation is really about putting a process around how you as an organisation are going to manage that information and make it usable inside of your organisation. So that's all the way from capture, classification, how your employees are going to access it, through to archival and eventually the disposal of it or the removal of it from your organisation. And the real goal, the objective of effective information management is to provide the right information at the right time to the right people to allow them to do their job effectively. As far as what we're seeing, especially in a Microsoft 365 world, and I think that'll resonate with the audience here, is that organisations for many years have been moving towards Microsoft 365, and in particular SharePoint, as a platform for that information management. And that's really based around SharePoint and features that brings along with it. We've got a strong document management story there, records management. We've also got classification and governance there as well. So not surprisingly, organisations see that as a place that they can achieve and make steps towards achieving that goal of information management. One of the other patterns that we're seeing, and this is probably one to keep your eyes open for and relate to employee experience, is that we're seeing that as organisations move across onto this platform, they're moving what used to traditionally be, I call them line of business systems, things like a document management system, or another common one we see is a legal matter management system or case management system. These used to be applications that were either proprietary or their own isolated applications on a desktop that a user would click on and go into. These are being replaced by just Microsoft 365 or just SharePoint. And so what that's kind of led to, I guess, is that in our employees' minds, is they used to have these isolated systems that they would go into, in that I'd come in to work, and if I needed to work on a project, I'd go to the project management system. If I needed to get something from the intranet, I would go to the intranet. If I needed something from our HR system, I would go to the HR system. Now we've got to be careful that bringing all of this onto the Microsoft 365 platform, that our end users are starting to lose those boundaries between the systems. And all of this information, now if I want to go and find a project, well, we go to SharePoint. If I want to go to find a legal case, I go to SharePoint. If I want to find a HR policy, I go to SharePoint. So this information overload isn't helped by us getting it onto one unified platform. Now, that is something we can overcome, but it's something that needs thought and planning as we make this move. It makes a lot of sense from an organisational point of view to get everything onto that one platform, because we've got one identity, one set of security, one set of administration, and a common set of tools and user interface from a training perspective. But we have to have that mindset of what does this mean from our employee experience of them having to use these systems on a daily basis. And that's really an area that we play in from OnePlace Solutions, and where we think the focus or the vision that we have on this is try to simplify. And that's what we do with our products. It's taking these business challenges and how can we simplify this from the employee's experience to keep those systems usable.
Thank you. That's great insights and great way to kind of frame the place of information management in employee experience. Andrew, yes. Let's go to you. We're working with lots of different organisations at the moment to help them improve the way they govern and manage their information. I'm curious to know what conversations are you having with our clients, and also what's the thinking behind some of the solutions that we're building for them?
So one very common conversation I'm having for the last 18 months, and sort of really started these conversations, they probably coincided with COVID in some ways, is around the information retention, data loss prevention, and the information protection side of things. So, and I think it's partly because people are understanding that in these trying times, it's time to maybe focus a bit more on information, the protection of information, or the security side of things. It's not, when I say security, I'm not meaning more like locking the door security. I mean the security of the information should it leave the environment, should it accidentally get downloaded and sent somewhere. See, that seems to be very common now, and the feature set that's in the platform now at different licensing levels is pretty good. There's a lot of options there for people to start introducing this capability to their organisation. It doesn't come without the change side of things, though. You know, there's a lot of, especially if you're introducing things like encryption to documents, and then you're sending those out of the organisation. That's a new thing for people. You know, there's lots of considerations for you when you're sending information, or if you're receiving it as well. You know, why can't I open this? And then they're ringing you up and saying, why can't I open it? There's lots of new skills there. So I think from an employee experience point of view, definitely some of the considerations are education and also sort of literacy discussion, really, around better information protection and management and so on. It's a part of information management. But it's all about the safety and the security of the information. So that's a big area of discussion, particularly that prevention or that protection side of things. And retention, of course, the records management always been a challenge for a lot of organizations. The feature set in the Microsoft stack there is very good if you don't have anything in place right now. You can do a lot to get that retention retention information and protect it from, you know, deletions and inadvertent mistakes, and you can do a lot towards that records management goal of your organisation. So I think the other area we're seeing is around information management, like wrapping processes around information activities. Now that like workflows and stuff's not new, but I think where I've seen a renewed focus is on the killer feature, I guess, is the visibility of where something is in a process. So it's really easier to run up some Power Automate flows and get approvals going and things. But it's hard to, and look, things will always get reviewed, things always get approved, right? We all know that. This is going to get through the wash and come out the other end. But the important point is, where is it at any given time? And that's the bit that people seem to be focusing on, because, you know, organisations have got a little less staff, it feels like, everywhere. They're all got new people coming in. They're all at home, and they can't like lean over the fence and say, "Well, yeah, where's that at?" You know, and visibility of where something is and expectations between people is really important. So a lot of our sort of document management processes that we would just your automation type projects are sort of coming along with a nice little Power App front end, which sort of ties it all together and gives people that visibility. So those are really exciting kind of differences to how we used to do automation in the old days. And that's that's changing a little bit from the employee experience point of view. You're giving them this experience of knowing where something is at any given time, so they can make the right decision, make the right phone call, start the right chat, chase the right person. So yeah.
One thing that I love that you've always said, AJ, is we're kind of moving from people having to go to the information coming to you instead. So technology playing that hard role of making sure you're getting the right access to the right information.
Yeah, and that's a filtering kind of, the word, what you just sparked there in my mind was the filtering idea, which what Cameron said earlier, about there's all this information and it's always going to be there. Our job is not to stop the increase in information, that's futile, but I think it's to, if you can slice it and filter it down to what's important at any given time, that's the goal really, I think. Yeah. And then and then integration, the other thing is the joining the systems together. That's definitely where we're seeing the collaborative capabilities of Microsoft is immense. So, but then the nice organized structured world of a case management system or a project system, instead of trying to implement those technologies on top of SharePoint, people are opting to connect them together, and that's sensible, right? It's joining them together, get the best out of that line of business app, but get the collaborative prowess out of the Teams experience, which is and it seems to be getting easier to do that as well. There's a lot of great connectivity and stuff in the Logic App space, in the Power Automate space. It certainly isn't as trying to get some of these connections going, between systems. Yeah.
Max, let's come to you. I'm moving around the table at the room, keeping it interesting. Now, I'm anticipating you asking me to play a video soon. How's AvePoint thinking about employee experience? Can you share a little bit about how AvePoint are helping organisations with information management and knowledge management?
Yeah, so probably not a word you associate with AvePoint, for those who know AvePoint, employee experience, but for those of you who don't know AvePoint, who are we? We're the largest ISV that migrate, manage and protect data in 365. Global ISV, head office out of Jersey. And, for us, the idea of employee experience is about making the access to data simple and making that a really easy experience for staff. But to get there, information management is at the heart of that, right? We've got to get that information management experience right first to enable that experience. So I thought, and speaking with Claudia, rather than talking about how we're doing it, listening to me talk is probably not that interesting. Maybe just share a story, a case study, a visual case study we've just completed with Devonport City Council, helping them implement information management in their council, and goes for about a minute, just talk about the impact it's had for them. So yeah, if we can load that up, cool.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to mute the room for a second so that I can share this with you guys. Steph, could you perhaps mute the room for me, please? I can't seem to be able to do it. Ignore me. I figured it out. Let's get this going. Do let me know, everyone, if you can't hear this. So if you could just give a thumbs up.
So we have our true collaboration. We have people sharing documents, going to meetings, working on the same document. They don't have to go away and then edit that document. It's done. The work is done right then and there, which is fantastic. We also have our compliance. We've got our true records management governance within the SharePoint system, and we have a window on SharePoint that helps us as records managers look at, manage and dispose of the information, which is fantastic. And most importantly, users are working the way they want. They're using the apps that they normally use, and they are doing things in place. They don't have to go out of that system to manage their documents, which is awesome.
Awesome. So I will just stop sharing my screen now and mute myself and put the mute room back on.
People hear us again?
Yeah.
There's like 4 cameras in the air.
I know, yeah. Anywhere to look. It's very confusing. So for me, the 3 things I think are relevant that Debbie said in that video were the fact that I think combined with the 365 platform and the solution we're able to deploy there, true collaboration was something we lit up, right? This experience where staff could work together, whether it was in a meeting or whether it's from home now, in the office, and work in real time with their documents that traditionally when you think about information management has been difficult. She made the point later on that staff are working the way they want with the tools they know. And I think in the context of many organisations, Andrew, you talk about the change element that comes with this. We're not saying to staff, hey, go and use a new system. They're still using Word and PowerPoint and Excel and these tools that they've known for a long time. I think that's really important. And the third thing for me is they're not having to go away. They're having to go out of a system that they traditionally would create documents in to then implement information management and enforce those document and records policies. So I think that's a really interesting story about how we're trying to make that experience, that access to data, as I said, much simpler from an information management perspective. Claudia touched on knowledge management as well as a second half of that employee experience question. And in my experience, having worked with lots of customers in this space, very few have nailed knowledge management. I don't know if you guys have seen organisations do it well, but it's this nirvana. We want to share information, have a source of truth, make it easily digestible, searchable. But in reality, it's really tough. I think most haven't got a way to, I suppose, surface that tacit knowledge, but that's okay because that's difficult. It's in people's heads. But even the explicit knowledge, the stuff that's written down, is hard to share. So again, for us, we've got to get that information management framework right first, because without that, you really can't go into that knowledge management space. But what I love, and we love, the fact that you've got tools now in the 365 platform. You've got Viva Topics, you've got SharePoint Syntax. The technology is now there to light up knowledge management. But again, if we don't get the foundation right, the base right, then you're really not going to be able to leverage those tools. So for us, it's helping organisations get that IM in place so that we can start leveraging these new tools, leveraging machine learning, leveraging Viva Topics, to make that experience easy, automate it as well, make it easy to find, and hopefully then encourage those organisations who are struggling with knowledge management to start entering stuff and give the power to the end users to enter that tacit knowledge that traditionally they've had nowhere to put. So yeah, there's a lot of upside we've got at the moment with how we can light up that employee experience across IM and knowledge management. So yeah.
Love it. And the point that you touched on as well around not having to get people to work in different tools, people will stick with what they're familiar with, right? And Word, Excel, PowerPoint, email has been around forever. And, death to email, but it's not going away, right? Anytime soon, and it definitely has a place. And that kind of brings me to you, Cameron, especially even thinking about that kind of the email lens as well. Integration seems to really be at the top of everyone's mind at the moment. So from an Engaged Squared perspective, a lot of the conversations we're having with our customers is how can we better integrate all of our tools, even within the M365 ecosystem, being able to connect email, for example, and what conversations are happening there into places like Microsoft Teams, being able to store documents that are sent to you via email in the right location. All of those different things are really at the top of everyone's mind. So I wanted to understand a little bit about how OnePlace approach integration, and also where should people start when they're thinking about designing a better digital experience?
Okay.
Big question.
Big question.
Yeah.
Let's start with how we think about integration, and really, it starts with how do we think about the modern digital workplace. And for me, I see this as three things. The modern digital workplace is the intersection of people, process, and technology. It's people that do things in our organisation. Process and technology does nothing on its own. It's the people that are core to our business. They are what actually gets the work done. Process is what they do. It's us formalising what our employees do. And the technology is simply there to facilitate it, make it happen. So when we talk about integration, we're talking about bringing data from multiple systems or features from multiple systems together. And why? What is the purpose of bringing that stuff together? Why are we doing that? Well, fundamentally, it's because an employee is trying to perform a process, and that process involves more than one system, data out of multiple systems. So that's really the driver for integration. And it's a really interesting exercise to try and go through some of these core business processes inside of organisations and identify where this is happening, where multiple systems are involved. I've got a slide deck that I go through for totally different purpose. It's more a development talk, but I think it's relevant here just to give an appreciation for how common this is. I'm sure this is something you can all relate to. A salesperson inside of an organisation has to create quotes. It's core to what they do in their role, maybe doing this multiple times a day. Let me just walk you through what that looks like in some organisations. They're creating these quotes in Word. They open up Microsoft Word, but they're not going to start with a blank document. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open up a few other quotes that I've done recently that might be similar to the one that I need to do today. I won't just open one because I want to get the closest match, so I'll open up three of them. I'll copy and paste one of them as a starting point. I'll remove all of the customer specifics. Then I'll open up a price list or a product catalogue, copy across my line items and the current pricing of them. I'll then have to maybe open up an Excel spreadsheet or a calculator to actually do this to totals because Word's not real good at that. At that point in time, I've got a quote. But who am I going to send it to? I'm going to open up the CRM system. I'm going to have to find the company record, get some details off that. But then I need to find a contact. That's usually a linked record off somewhere else in our CRM system. I'll get those details and I'll put it on the quote. And finally, I'm at a point where I'm almost ready to send my quote. I haven't got to the sending part of it yet, but at least I've created it. Let's just look at what that looked like on that person's desktop. I started Word. That was pretty easy. I had to find those other quotes. Now, if I've got some basic information management going on, those quotes would probably be stored in SharePoint. So I have to open up a browser window, find the document library with the quotes in it, find those three quotes and open them up. I've now got 4 instances of Word running. I then had to find my price list. Again, that's probably in SharePoint somewhere. I open that up, might be a PDF, might be an Excel document. Then I was copying and pasting stuff, shifting between windows. Then I needed my details from CRM, my company and my contact. So I fire up the CRM system. Usually this is a few different windows. We can find the company and then we've got linked contacts off that. By my count, we're up to somewhere around the 12 to 13 windows open on a desktop to perform something that is core to this person's job. They're trying to perform a process and they've got all these windows open. And employees, because they're doing this so often, they get in a state of flow. They know exactly what's going on while they're performing the process. But as soon as that concentration's broken for a moment, they look back and they think, what are all these windows? As human nature, we start closing those windows down, we get back, we feel in control, and then we start the process again.
That's true.
And this is just for them starting that process. I'm sure they already had Teams open, Outlook open, probably 15 tabs in a web browser window open, and this is what they're faced with doing every single day. So where does integration come in? Well, we could make these processes a heck of a lot better. We could give them something in Word where they've got a template to start from with their quotes. We could integrate the ability for them just to select items off their product catalogue and their price list to insert it in, and we could integrate the CRM data so they can just simply select the customers and contacts and actually really streamline that process. So, really interesting one. But imagine you were to do this. I don't know. You're in the airport, you come out of the toilets, and there's this little machine there that's got smiley faces on it. It's got a big smiley face at one end and a big frown at the other end. Imagine you've got your employees to look at those core processes they went through every day, and after they've gone through that process, get them to rate the experience of having performed that process. Would they be giving it a big smiley face, or would they be giving it a big frown? And that's to take it down to our level of digital workers, that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to improve the experience of them performing their processes with our technology. So concentrate on where those big frowns are. So I guess that's at a high level. Us at OnePlace Solutions, what we look at when we look at doing our integrations is not simply just bringing those systems together, but we believe the real power is in doing the integrations, but doing it in a personalised way. And I think that's where we get the real cut through. So a lot of our products are in bringing solutions that your organisations have built up in SharePoint and Microsoft 365 down into the applications that your users are doing that work in, down into the Office suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, into Outlook, as you mentioned, and really bringing those solutions right down in there, but doing that in a personalised way. So I was speaking earlier how we're seeing organisations building complete systems, such as a project management system or a legal matter management system on top of SharePoint. But bringing that, an example of that would be something like if we were creating that Word document, we created that quote, imagine we needed to save that, and it was for a project, we needed to save that into our project management system. Rather than just trying to save that and being presented with all of SharePoint, those thousands of projects, half of them are no longer even active, a lot of them have got nothing to do with me, instead of having to have just this mass that is SharePoint, that is all these hundreds of project sites, hundreds of legal sites, hundreds of intranet sites, what our software does is it allows the user to see that information and that data in a way that makes sense to them. So when they save it, they can see, oh, I want to save it into the project management system. But inside that, they can see, oh, here are the 3 active projects that I'm working on. So rather than having to navigate this mass of information, it's being brought down to the user and driven down to them in intelligent ways. And this is allowing us to, this personalisation is allowing us to realise that promise of information management. When I said the definition of information management is trying to provide the right information to the right people at the right time to get their job done efficiently. And that's kind of the complete picture. That having that base information management, as Max was talking about, is critical, but they're driving that through via integration and via personalisation to complete the story and deliver on that promise of information management. And that's the area that we play in every day.
I love it, Cameron. Thumbs up if you have a million tabs open on your computer every day. I know I do. There was someone I saw the other day that had definitely took the cake. I actually think they had the maximum amount of tabs open that you can have on a browser. It was quite impressive. But you think about that as well, obviously your computer's working really hard to keep all those tabs open, right? And do the hard work, but also the mental load that brings on your mind. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people don't really consider is the context switching that you need to do just from jumping to application to think about where do I get that again? Oh yes, I need to go here, and we kind of get used to those kind of poor processes over time, right? We just accept it as the norm when it really isn't the norm. So yeah, I love what you're saying about, really making sure you marry people, process and technology together and really understand what are those frown points, those frowny faces, if you will, to improving the experience. And I think a big part of that is change management. AJ, we have a lot of conversations about this and the importance of change management in these types of initiatives. Yeah. So what suggestions do you have for organisations who are interested in improving information management, knowledge sharing as well? Who should be involved in these types of projects, right? A lot of the time we're just talking to IT, but if we're looking at it from a people lens and a process lens, what does that look like for organisations?
Yeah. So I full disclosure, had a little chat with Claudia before on this one because it's a really good question, and I started to mull it over, and I kind of thought about what's topical around knowledge management now, and I a big undercurrent at the moment is a lot of organisations have experienced that new staff coming in, a lot of staff turnover. Just about every industry I've talked to, like I thought, oh, government's going to be immune. No, government's the same. Like everyone's just been shaken up. So you've got this percentage of people coming in, and a real common thread is, I can't find things. I don't know where things are. Where is the guidance, please? And of course, that you think of human point of view, there's a lot of load on each other to help each other out. Most people haven't really had the time to create these knowledge bases and knowledge things. It's a full-time job. I mean, it's in museums they have curators. Like we don't have those in businesses, and then we're all kind of like, why is our knowledge base so rubbish? And so I think when it comes to improving the organisation of your information to help people from a day-to-day perspective, particularly around policy, procedures, process, reference information, any kind of project there, any sort of initiative needs to kind of think about a couple of things. Number one is that commitment by people. People don't have all the time in the world for this kind of thing, right? So you need to be thinking, like, reset your expectations on what you think is possible here, because we do see some very big kind of dreams, nirvana type projects, and then they never emerge, and everyone's really hard on themselves for that failed, and it's like, well, you kind of bit off way too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then and time's huge, and the time it takes to do things, like we all just say, oh, how long does it take to create a page about that thing? And it's like, that's not a 20-minute job. Like, if anyone's written a knowledge base or a quick reference guide before, that can be hours, right? And so you think about all the hundreds of things that you might have out of date, and so that really compounds that knowledge management challenge. And so I guess there's a technology thing that comes in there too, it draws me to that Viva Topics notion, right? I think you mentioned it earlier on, and it's an interesting one because it's a hard one to demonstrate. I mean, I've got our Viva Topics. I'll share my screen and I'll just explain, because I think a lot of people would have heard this one. Now, what Viva Topics is doing is it's using machine learning to kind of look. It's almost like Microsoft's appreciated the fact that no one's got time to manage knowledge. So what can we do instead? They've got machine learning algorithms to kind of look through a lot of your content and then suggest a type of a potential page, and then you manage these pages and say, yeah, that's a page I want. And I'll show one now, because what I find is quite hard is demonstrating this is really difficult, because it's a machine learning based process, right? So as soon as you try and turn it on, there's nothing there because the robot's got to sit there and learn for a while. So we do get people sort of not getting it until they see it for real. So if I show this is I'll start from the search experience. Actually, I'll pop over there. So we've had it running in our environment for a while, and it's surprisingly really interesting as to what it does. So I've just preloaded a few things. So I'll give you this example here. This is me searching for the term information architecture. Now we have new consultants come on board. They might be really interested in what our view is on that, and it's a really common search term. And so the first thing you get here is there's a topic card pops up here. Now that's all auto. No, none of this. I haven't touched any of this. Like, this is just the machine has built all this itself. I'll show you where I did touch it, but that's part of topics. So I click on information architecture, and you get this page, right? And it's a topic, what they call a topic page, and it suggests a description of what that is. Sometimes it'll pull that from Wikipedia and throw that in there, so you get a chance to edit that if you don't like the look of it. And then it suggests all these people in the business. Now, all that suggested people, so Rob, Tom, Joe, Roy, and Stephen, they're all people that the system believes would be people to talk to about this topic. And it's surprisingly accurate, right? The pinning people, that's the bit I told you I've touched. So I've gone on there and said, yeah, talk to Rach, talk to me, and you can come to us first if you've got questions about that. And then everything else is just auto-generated. So this is suggested files and pages, all these different things and it does a really good job of this, actually. I'm really surprised. So again, I've done nothing to build this page, and it's constantly being updated. That's the other thing, right? Like knowledge management initiatives often like do a great thing, and then all of a sudden there's no budget afterwards to maintain anything, and then they just die on the vine, right?
Yeah.
So whereas this is constantly updating, and it's also suggesting sites which have a lot of activity around that topic. And this is my favorite piece, actually. This is kind of a little window on the graph, right? So a lot of you have probably heard about the Microsoft graph. This is like, I think it's a great visualization of what a graph is, right? So a graph is a series of objects with relationships, and these lines actually are relationships in a database. So if I click on, so information architecture is our node in this little graph, and it's saying all these little things around it, and it's quite fun. You can kind of play with move it around a little bit just for fun. But if I click on that little join there, which is actually called an edge, I believe, in a graph database, you actually get a chance to edit that and say how it's related. Now that's also augmenting that algorithm. The algorithm is now saying, oh, Cameron, you've related this topic to this topic. I'm going to actually weight that higher now because you've augmented my results. And then from that, it can do a lot. It starts to reason a lot more and suggest these connections. And of course, it's a navigation control too. So I'll click on enterprise architecture, and we'll nip over here and see that page as well. Now, is this sort of solution? This is a good example of like, now I think VivaTops is like a licensing band, but I do reckon people should consider it because we don't touch any of this, and yet it's serving us and unifying stuff. I get in there and manage the topics. It says here, some of you might be wondering, like, how does it do that? This is all the topics. It's been busy the last few months. I've noticed it really pick up. It's making a lot of assumptions. We see a lot of our client names in there. It thinks that they're worthy of creating a topic out of. See some things like modern internet pops up a lot, right? That's a suggested topic. We talk about that a lot in our business. We talk about modern internet. So if I come in here and I think, yeah, okay, well, that sounds pretty good as a topic. So let's publish that, and then that one will start being able to be utilized in the business. So I guess there's still a little bit of maintenance there, right? But I'm certainly not necessarily spending hours on it, right? And you can decentralize that to across the business as well. And that's another big thing, is that, you know, a lot of the time knowledge management projects can be considered, oh, we'll create this little team and then they'll solve that problem for the business. And it's like, well, it's knowledge management, it's people stuff, right? So you need to be thinking broader about how to bring people into the mix. So technology like this, I've been very surprised at this actually. We've had machine learning for a while. We've had, Delve came out, and there was all this that's the precursor to a lot of this. And it was pretty good, and then it took a few years, and then this drops. And at first, because you turn it on, there's nothing there. It's not learning anything yet. And then it quickly ramps up, and then it's very surprising as to how it stitches things together, and sort of provides a bit of a base for this. Yeah. Like when you don't have time, you don't have resources, you don't have huge budgets, these sorts of technologies are great. And then I always love a non-budget option. If you don't have budget for this kind of thing, then there's actually tons of stuff you can do with your platform now. So a massive area I think that is overlooked is some of the search capabilities. So there is a whole config backend in your search. It's usually IT's got the keys to it, but it's there. It shouldn't necessarily be guarded. There's ways to get business people in there. There's a role you can give to people to manage the search and things, and you can start to put those sort of like if you've got no time at all, no money, no budget, and you're finding it hard to help people get information. A big tip is there's search bookmarks, right? Now you can just get in there and create like a best bet, like a Google suggested result. They're great, like they're so overlooked, but they can really alleviate some of those pressures that people are facing when they're trying to find things and they're new to the business or the business has changed drastically. And so there's lots of stuff in that kit bag now that you can do with the resources and time you have. I constantly show people these things, and they're like, "When did that come in?" And I'm like, It's been there since 2010. But, you know, people just want the shiny, right? They don't think about using what's in their toolbox already and just maximizing the licensing value that they're paying for today. So, yeah, so I think there's some messages there around that too. So knowledge management doesn't have to be a big, huge project. I think start small, and then communication and involvement is really key as well. You know, communication, really.
Yeah, and training as well, it sounds like. And the other thing I picked up on there too is having a champion network, because managing information, managing knowledge is not something that's just one person's job. No offense to anyone on the call who's a knowledge manager. But I'm sure you feel this as well, if we do have any knowledge managers on the call, that it's, you know, the weight of the world is on your shoulders. From a change perspective, really leaning into subject matter experts across your business, making sure you bring them on the journey with you and educate them about what they can use with the tools that they have today is really important. So definitely lots that can be done there.
Growth opportunities for people. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't give the responsibility of curating the search experience to someone in the business who's just new, perhaps. Shock horror, you know, like what would IT say? But they can't do much wrong. Like you're not going to break anything. But there's some, you know, learning new skills, some job satisfaction. There's lots of opportunities in that knowledge management space, I think. Even upskilling is a big thing. I mean, we talk about that a lot, right? And things like how to automate and things like that. Learning some basics in that space. You don't have to be a developer to do all that. You can start small and start learning, and that can be immensely rewarding. Automating a few of your personalized tasks, things like that. It's a big kit bag. There's lots of opportunity there, but again, it's time, it's resources, it's workload, it's mental health, all that sort of thing, isn't it, at the moment? So, hopefully some ideas
research as well, right? You talk about upskill and training, and I find in that avoid, I'm sure you see the same thing talking to customers, but the amount of times I've heard, search doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
God, you're like, hold on. What do you mean? Show me. And search works really well. It just happens to search everything. And then you show them that actually, did you know that you can use Boolean search terms, and no, I didn't know. Wow, this is amazing. So that training piece, the search actually is so powerful that staff are just used to searching a file share, right? And searching a file name. That's the only bit of metadata they really have been able to search for years. And you put this content in something as powerful as 365 now, and you're searching everything everywhere, and they don't know how to do it. So easy thing, right? No budget. Not much time. Cool. Just share some tips about how to search. I think that's a huge thing as well.
Even I remember explaining to someone about how when you do a search, the URL's got the whole search query in it. And I was like, oh, save that for later. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you can rerun that later onto the URL. Mind blowing. And it's these little things that are really, really useful that can alleviate, can unblock things in someone's day. So there's lots that can be done at that grassroots level, as well as cool features like topics, things like that, and awesome stuff like provisioning cloud governance stuff. I've got a couple of customers with that at the moment, and just really smooths things out, right? And so there's but again, don't have to go hunting necessarily for huge budgets to try and do things. And when you do get those huge budgets, if you're lucky, don't bite off more than you can chew, because people and time are the things you just can't procure a lot of the time, right?
Yeah. There's definitely different levels to it, and I think that's come bringing it back to the information. There's just so much of it out there. I think Max said it well with making sure it's fundamental to get that information architecture right, and that sort of allows people to navigate into the information that's in the business in a structured way. The next level is search. If we can't navigate through how we see the business, then search is the next biggest thing. Can we find something through search? And then it's the intelligence on top of that to proactively drive things, and that's what we're seeing Microsoft do out of the box. It's proactively suggesting things before you go looking for it. It's just sitting there. That personalization that Viva Topics is bringing that together as well, using that artificial intelligence. So it's just those levels. It's like start with the information architecture, the information management. Make sure you're leveraging those simple things like search. Start building up on those levels. If you went straight in and tried to do the personalized proactive and presenting people with the right stuff, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall if you don't have the fundamentals right.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah.
Amazing tips shared. Max, I'll give you the final word here. What are your top 3 tips for organisations looking to improve information management or knowledge management?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually had a chat with our product manager for information management, which is archiving records and stuff like that. But we've covered a couple of them today. Maybe I'll start with my third, which is archiving, right? One of the challenges, and we've got a customer right now, they're looking to move in about 75 terabytes of content into 365. Yeah, they're a big organisation, but they're not CBA big, you know. And you look at that and you think, well, firstly, you got to pay a lot of money to bring that content in, to store that in 365. But secondly, how are people going to find anything they need? So the first tip would be come up with a really simple archiving strategy, you know, because you've got powerful tools now that will search, but you've got so much data that's really hard to find what you need. To get rid of that redundant, that obsolete, that trivial content, come up with something really simple for archiving. Second piece is, maybe we go back to IA for a second. Just get an IA in place that is a good foundation. You know, when you're building a house, no one starts with the home automation system, right? Like, there's a reason you put the foundation in place. The boring concrete slab goes in first. And I think the same is true for information management, right? You've got to have a simple, well-structured, functional IA. If you go structural, you follow the org chart, then in 2 years' time, when there's an org change, the org chart gets thrown in the bin, new structure comes out, your IA is out of date again, right? So you need to get that in a way that's going to scale, it's going to be built for longevity. So that getting that IA right is probably the second thing. And the third thing is, which we've touched on, is that user experience. Probably a word that's been around a bit longer than employee experience, but going back to our records product owner, she has this saying that records management now almost needs to be done by stealth. The closer we get to the end user, the simpler the solution needs to be, right? Because they don't want to, as an example, enter metadata. They don't want to kick off a workflow with a Power Apps front end. They just want it to happen. And we need to build that into the background. And that employee experience has got to be front of mind for information management to keep it really simple. And that, as a second part of that, is making sure we do have one platform, because topics isn't going to work if we've got information sitting in a file share, in an open text database. That's going to work where we've actually got one system we use, whether it's for collaboration, document management, records management, whatever it might be. The power of these tools, these emerging technologies, is from having our content, our information in one place. So that is my third piece. Keep that user experience front of mind. Yes, archiving. User experience, third piece, and what I say, second, information architecture. Get the IA right. So yeah, that's the 3 things that we're recommending to organisations.
Yeah, I love that. And I've just posted those top tips in the chat for you all to remember, because I think they're fantastic top tips, and it really does summarise, I guess, the whole conversation that we've been having today. Getting rid of trivial, redundant information so that people aren't using the wrong stuff, right? We want to make sure that people have access to the right information, structuring your information in the right way, keeping it secure. AJ, what you were talking about at the start of the session around a lot of organisations coming to us and looking at, just because of the sheer volume of information, how can they make sure that it's protected in the right way, but in a way that doesn't get in the way of people collaborating.
In their way,
yeah. And then keeping that user experience front of mind, I think, is probably the biggest one, right? Making sure that you don't have to have a million tabs open, as Cameron was talking about, that the processes actually make sense for the way that your people are working in your business as well. We've got 7 minutes left. I just want to open it up to any questions from the group. So anyone who's in the room or on the call, if you'd like to come off mute and ask a question, please do. People in the room, you don't have to come off mute. Just talk. There is one thing in the chat from Jonathan.
Yeah, good point, Jonathan.
Yeah.
There is that pursuit of perfection that can sometimes get in our way. Where, I mean, it's good to have, set your bar high, right? But then to to build the perfect structure, the perfect system, and then like 2 years later, it's all out of date because the all changed. The foundation point's interesting. I one of my customers is a council. I think they're on the call, Jax. One of the metaphors that we kind of sometimes use is this idea of like, and I think you'll all understand this one. It's the idea of like a master plan in a region. You know how cities have a master plan, right?
City didn't get one.
Yeah.
Started building.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because they sort of have to change them over time, right? And they have this idea about where they're going to build. They know that in 30 years, they'll probably push suburbs out into those areas. They don't build the roads out there yet, but they kind of know, oh, we've reserved that for growth, right? But it kind of changes every 5 years. Like I got a transport corridor, federal transport corridor about 250 metres from my house. It was earmarked for road, 8 kilometres straight up the guts of Brisbane. And of course, the master plans had to change because now it's a koala corridor. They party in there, and there's native species in there, and it's this thing. So the master plan changes in terms of its land use. But the point is they've got this understanding that your IA is going to scale, because you mentioned scale, 100%. Like you have to anticipate growth in scale. It's just a natural part of information management, and then be able to adapt it. Make sure it's changing. If there's bits not working, absolutely don't look at the nav and go, oh, we got that wrong. Like, no, it's time to change it. Yeah. It's okay. Give it a little renovation. Like, lucky you, you can do it. You've got tools to do it. So there's a sort of an idea that, have that goal, but then be ready to adapt and change as the business changes. Like, that's how you keep meeting the user's expectation and giving them that experience that they need. Rather than becoming stale, out of date, and problematic.
Yeah. And if you look at modern sites now, right, which is most of this stuff in 365 posts, the fact that you've got a relatively flat structure now, you haven't got these traditional site collections and sub-sites and sub-sub-sites and sub-sub-sub-sites. You've got hub sites and you've got nested hubs, right? It actually makes that reorganization and renaming piece so much easier than it used to be. So to that point, it's not set and forget and we got it wrong, too bad. You do have that ability to be flexible and change.
I love it.
Support the users.
Awesome. Are there any other questions? One on the call? If not, shameless plug from me. Put my camera back on. So this is the first of 3 sessions that we're running that are all focused on employee experience in some way. So if you liked today's conversation, please register for our upcoming events. So we've got on the 22nd of September, a conversation around where does your intranet and Viva fit into your digital employee experience strategy. And then on the 13th of October, improving your frontline experience through low-code apps. So these sessions will be hybrid as well. So if you're based in Melbourne, come and join us in person for breakfast on the 22nd of September. If you're in Brisbane, we'll be in town on the 13th of October to talk about low-code apps and frontline. As always, if you do have more questions about information management, please do get in touch. If you want to continue the conversation with any of our panelists today, so with Andrew or Cameron or Max, do let me know and I'll pass on their details to you, and we can keep the conversation about information management going and how that can improve your employee experience. But thank you everyone on the call and also in the room for joining today and for sticking with us for the first 4 minutes where we had a few technical issues, getting used to being in rooms again and together in person. So have a fantastic Thursday and thank you for joining.
Thanks guys. Thanks everyone.